Good morning, Jessica here with a set of glittery gold cards featuring the stunning floral background stamps from the Ton. To start off, I stamped the Morning Glory Garden background stamp with Versamark on a piece of Arches cold pressed watercolor paper and heat embossed it with gold tinsel embossing glitter. I highly recommend using a stamp positioner like the Misty when you're using watercolored paper to help get a good impression. I already heat embossed and colored two more backgrounds using the Rose Garden and Peony Garden stamps, and I'll show you what I did with those later. I love that sparkly gold. I use Zig Clean Color real brush markers and a water brush to color my flowers. I'll include the colors I listed in the supply list below. I have no real technique for coloring these flowers, but in general I try to outline the veins in the flowers with light lines in one color and go over the outside shape with the second color. Then I use a water brush to blend the colors together. I sped up the coloring for the flowers so my video wouldn't last for an hour. You'll notice me holding the water brush, tip pointing up and tapping on my work surface at the beginning of my blending. Sometimes as the water starts to flow, it comes out too quickly. I found that tapping it seems to help regulate the flow of water. I also use a piece of paper towel to soak up any areas where there is too much water. I like to work on a stack of cheap copy paper and use it to check the flow of water out of my brush and to clean out the brush between colors by swiping on the paper until the water runs clear. My morning glory may not be the most realistic morning glory out there, but I love the way the water helps the colors blend and you get that beautiful shade of lavender somewhere in between the dark blue and the purple. And here's my finished panel. It took about 30 minutes to color and was totally dry about 5 minutes later. My next step is to figure out how to lay out my card. Since the background stamp is a 6x6 size, I can get 2 cards out of each stamping if I'm careful. I use a scrap piece of vellum cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 to help me see my options. I can lay that down in various angles across my stamp to see what I like. Once I've decided on a layout, I'll trim the pieces down. First, we'll do the full-size panel. I actually ended up trimming it down to 4 by 5 1/4 so I would have a white border around my background. I also die cut a small stitched rectangle shape for my sentiment. I'm using a sentiment from the large Peony 2 stamp set from the Ton. I prepped the rectangle with a powder tool and then stamped the sentiment in Versamark before heat embossing it with gold superfine embossing powder. Next, I'm taking metallic gold thread and winding it around my background panel. I adhered the ends of my thread with a little bit of micropore tape so they wouldn't slide around. After winding it around my panel, I trimmed the end of my thread and attached the background panel to my card base with an ATG gun. You'll notice me lightly bending my watercolor paper, and that's just because I didn't tape it down while I watercolored, so it curled slightly. I adhered the background panel to a 110-pound card base, which stopped the bending. I would recommend using 110-pound cardstock for watercolored panels for that very reason. 80-pound cardstock doesn't seem to quite hold up as well. Finally, I'm using foam tape to adhere my sentiment to the card and give it a little bit of dimension. For the second card, I'm using my cardstock swatch book to find a good coordinating color for my small watercolored panel. I chose blue violet as I wanted to bring out more of the blue shades in my card. I trimmed a piece to be a 1/4 inch wider than my panel and then adhered them together before adhering them to my vertical card base. Next, I took a word die and die cut it from white and the same blue-violet cardstock. I used a zig pen to add glue to the back of the white die cut and adhered it to my card panel. Then I added glue to the blue die cut and offset it over the white die cut to create a shadow and make it easier to read the word. And that's my completed card. Finally, here's my first Morning Glory card using the full-size background. Then I've got a card using a small strip of the Peony Garden stamp. A full-size background panel using the Rose Garden stamp that's similar to my Morning Glory card but vertically aligned. And finally, a full-size background panel using the Peony Garden stamp that is horizontally aligned like the Morning Glory card. And that's my set. 5 glittery cards from 3 background stamps. You can find more photos of each card in the supply list by visiting my blog. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. You can also find more of my creations by clicking on any of the social media links below, and my most recent video is also linked. Thanks so much for visiting and have a fantastic day.